If you look at who owns, let's take ancestry.com for just an example. Now, BlackRock, most of their investment goes into bioweaponry. So why would you invest money in bioweaponry and then buy a genealogy database that contains lots of people's DNA? Yeah. You are looking at people's DNA so you can target them with specific weapons, chemical weapons, weaponized vaccines. But there is an unknown blood group that is connected to the Rothschilds and their offshoots or senior. So are they looking for other people that are actually their blood group? You can bring them on side and say, well, you're one of us, welcome to the family. Or maybe they're looking for more people that have Rh null, which is golden blood. There are allegedly only 43 people in the world that have Rh null blood. Yeah, he worked for the NSA. And as soon as he had his medical, they found out what blood group he was. They immediately redeployed him to become a remote viewer.
I've kind of heard some theories. People say that I'm one of the greats. I'm the one that you love to hate. Shake them up like a quake. Pop your feelings and turn and dispose them like haters I throw away. I'm forever blessed. Got the spirit that's wholly controlling me. I ain't gotta coordinate. I just sit back and buckle my bills and I'm ready to blaze in the stars of my destination. Melted broadcast, open vision. Melted broadcast, open vision. Melted broadcast, open vision. Melted broadcast, open vision. What's going on, everyone? This is Tony Mars
and Mary Bly
with the Melted Broadcast. And today's guest is a true deep diver into the hidden side of history, an author, researcher, and former Freemason who spent over 40 years exploring forbidden knowledge. From his father's Masonic insights in the 1980s through classics like Holy Blood, Holy Grail, and the work of David Icke, to his groundbreaking discoveries on Tartaria and the human cloning during the pandemic. He's the man behind the explosive book, Tesla and the Cabbage Patch Kids, now translated into multiple languages. Please welcome to the show, Guy Anderson.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Mary. It's a lovely introduction. Thank you.
Yeah, so first of all, like we were just talking, I'm really excited to have you on the show. I've been, going through all your stuff, through your books, listening to the books. We got this in last night. Conspiracy theories.
Wow.
87 rabbit holes. I already started going through some of them. But I definitely want to highlight some of those topics tonight. And again, I really appreciate you coming on the show. This means a lot. You're a very educated person when it comes to these topics, and who better than to have you on the show. So again, thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it, and thanks again for your kind words.
So, for those who don't know Guy Anderson, can you please tell us who you are and how you got into these topics?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, as I said before we hit record, I am a conspiracy theorist, and love or hate that term, that describes me perfectly, because that is what I do. My dad sent me down the rabbit hole in my teens back in the 80s. He used to share information with me, get me to read books that you just wouldn't find in a regular bookstore. And then he started introducing me to secret societies. And I discovered that he was a Freemason, and he wouldn't tell me anything about what they did. So when I was old enough, I joined, and I realized it actually wasn't for me for a number of reasons. I didn't really agree with it, and I could see that I was never going to get high up enough to really uncover what you couldn't actually find out online now. But nevertheless, it was part of my journey to where I am now. I was a tattoo artist until 18 months ago, and my first book took off a little bit more than I anticipated, and I realized that I couldn't really do the two things anymore, and I was experiencing quite horrific back pain because of my job. So I went part time for a while, and the pain was still there, and it was actually starting to get worse. So here I am now. So this is all an accident, you know. I've gone from tattooing people, but to talking about Tartaria and conspiracy theories. So it's strange how life can just direct you into a path that you could never have anticipated a couple of years previously.
Yeah,
Right, that's true.
it's cool. It's so cool that you're a tattoo artist. Right before we started this, we're kind of showing, each other our ink. But I think that's pretty awesome. And so I want to jump. So with Tartaria, I haven't really been able to find a lot of information on it. It's one of those things, I guess like within your researching, that's purposely hidden. If you could kind of jump us and help us dive into that rabbit hole to talk about it, and just give us some knowledge
Yeah.
on it.
Yeah, sure. And intentionally hidden is exactly what happened. And ultimately, the reason that it's been hidden is because they were the first and foremost, they were harnessing free energy. So it was for people that have looked into Atlantis and studied that topic. I kind of refer to Tartaria as being an echo of Atlantis, a revival almost, perhaps also with Hyperborea. So taking the advanced technology in comparison to today from Hyperborea and Atlantis and re-establishing it, but in a slightly different way. So when you look at the buildings that we have across Europe, for example, and then going into America, in America it would be the Moorish buildings and these incredible
Okay.
cathedrals and star forts and the white cities, the world's fairs. That's was all built using the same principle of working with it was, well, sacred geometry ultimately, everything being built using the golden ratio. So if you imagine that the Earth is a circuit board and an energy grid, ley lines, in other
Yeah.
words, and that this circuit board isn't actually complete. So by putting, for example, a microchip or a big blob of solder or something in specific places, you can connect the grid and get it working. And that's what
Oh
all of these
wow.
sites did. And I think prior to that, sites like, for example, over here, Stonehenge, these ancient sites did the same thing. And I think they were balancing and harmonizing the earth, which in turn everything grew better. They could they could sort of control or moderate the weather to a certain extent, and it was all to do with frequency and a higher vibration. But with the discovery of fossil fuels and what became perhaps the biggest threat to that previous civilization would be the Standard
Yeah.
Oil Company. Rockefeller and the Standard Oil Company. The Industrial Revolution was quite close.
Yeah.
So they needed to remove any evidence that the previous civilization, not that long ago, were pulling energy from the ether. And of course, they were also using frequency to heal. And we had pharmaceuticals coming, which combined with the arrival of petroleum and the oil industry. So by removing Tartaria from the pages of history and relegating the Tartarians to a kind of nomadic, primitive, race of people, they were able to kind of start again and give us this backstory, this narrative of slow progression that we go from discovering fire, to the
Yeah.
wheel and agriculture and so on, and mathematics and astronomy, and then eventually sort of law and order and rules and so on, and then architecture. And here we are today. But actually, I think we've gone backwards. I think that the technology we have today might seem impressive, but it's the wrong technology. The frequencies are all off. We're actually using devices like we are now that actually, have a detrimental effect on us too. Um, so it's the wrong kind of technology. So they removed it, and I've traced that to being the Jesuits, and that
Okay.
financing the Jesuits were the bloodline families, ultimately the Rothschilds at the helm of that. So ultimately, it was a complete reset, the whitewashing of our history and the brainwashing of the people. So that's kind of in a nutshell. But what Tartaria was, but ultimately it was an ethos. Tartaria really is a landmass. It's an area. We're talking Russia, Asia, Eastern Europe, and going into Western Europe. But the
Okay.
ethos travelled. The ethos travelled with it. And you've got the Tartarians and the Moors would be the two main groups of people that were using the same knowledge, but building in a slightly different way.
So how did they go about, I guess, like erasing this civilization from like the face of the map? Like, what kind of tactics or techniques did they use to just bury this?
Well, first of all, if people are interested in that specific area, how did they do it? Then the work of Anatoly Fomenko, is a Russian professor, he's still with us. He was the first person to actually really write about this. Um, and there was a period of time called Red Terror, which occurred in Russia. And that's perhaps the most significant example of how they did it. They were going into houses, arresting people, searching the properties. They were taking any evidence, any blueprints, architectural plans, anything at all that connected to how these buildings were pulling in energy, any references to Tartaria, which is also, Tartary, and it's also Tartaric. So there are different names, if you like, for
Yeah.
Tartaria. Any references to these at all were removed. People, and you can look this up. It's not pseudoscience. People were arrested, and a lot of them were actually killed on their way to these prison camps. They died in transit, and these were priests, teachers, the elderly, anybody who had documentation. And this was all done through the Jesuit order. The Catholic Church was bankrupt. The Rothschilds financially
What?
bailed them out. Yeah, the
No
Rothschilds,
way.
on their ass. They had no money. So the Jesuit order were infiltrated, if you like, by the Orsini family, one of the bloodline families, and the Rothschilds financially bailed out the Vatican, and the Jesuits were then instructed to go out and remove any information, any evidence connecting to Tartaria. And that's what they did. And that's why we have so little documentation out there. But there are people that have written about it throughout history. Sebastian Munster is one that you can actually, these are old books, these are old
Yeah.
writers. Sebastian Munster, Mercator, Ortelius, um, they all wrote about it at the time. So it's well documented, but hard to find because these aren't books that you would stumble across even in a
Yeah.
secondhand bookstore very easily. But with the buildings themselves, they actually caused an event that resulted in what we call mud floods.
Yeah, the mud
And
flood theory, what was that?
well, that was spiking the grid. So we don't know how they did it. There's an amazing researcher called Michelle Gibson who believes that they actually spiked using direct energy weapons, key energy points. And these would typically be where you would find something like a star fort built. I believe there are 319 of those still here, and probably a lot more than that are buried. But they spiked the grid, and that kind of created a short circuit. The event of New Madrid in 1811 going into 1812 is a good example of how significant that was. The result of that was so severe that the Mississippi actually changed direction, reversed
No
180
way.
degrees.
That's
And
wild.
again, people can look that one up. Metallic objects were flying through the air. Wild animals were trying to get into people's properties because they were frightened. They wanted to be protected. Um, mud was caused by literally rivers overflowing, ice on tops of mountain ranges melting, and as it's melting at such great speed, it's picking up rock, mud, and so on, and all sorts of detritus, and it goes into towns and cities everywhere and buries everything. And we had volcanic eruptions. We had in 1816, the year, well, it was actually 3 years, but they call it the year without sun. I
Okay.
personally believe that there was a nuclear event. Some people say plasma, some kind of cataclysmic event, and they wiped out as much as they could. And what we've seen, the same, leading up to this, we're kind of starting to see the introduction of wealthy people wearing heavy lead makeup, wigs, and they're saying that they're shaving these aristocrats and elite families are shaving their heads for hygiene purposes, and then putting wigs on, which were, not actually that hygienic themselves. I think
Yeah.
that this is the result of radiation poisoning. Teeth were falling
Oh
out. They said that
yeah.
was introduction of sugar, led to people's teeth falling out. Sugar became really popular. So we've got people with no hair, people wearing heavy lead white makeup, wearing gloves indoors and out, scarves, neckerchiefs, high collars, and wearing dentures. I think this is radiation poisoning, and I think that is where we're seeing typhus, cholera, syphilis, all of these outbreaks that occurred. I think that they're actually all signs of radiation poisoning. So I think that they nuked the place, and I'm still working on this. I was doing it just a moment ago, a little bit more into this. I think and this is out there. I can't prove this, but I think there might have been a pole shift.
No way.
Yeah, because you're
Interesting.
talking just not that long ago. They were growing lime trees and citrus fruit in Russia, places now that are very cold. And I think that is why the Piri Reis map, for example, is so well detailed. It's incredibly accurate, but it shows it as land with animals on it and lots of different depictions. It's not covered in ice, and it's not, relatively speaking, it's not that old, the Piri Reis map. It shouldn't exist.
Yeah.
So if not that long ago, we've got a cartographer who I believe was an admiral, an Ottoman admiral. If he is drawing a very detailed map that is accurate today, years before the official discovery of Antarctica, that I think Antarctica hasn't been covered in ice for as long as we've been led to believe, and that there is something under the ice that is connected to Tartaria.
What do you think that is?
Or
It's interesting.
I
Or-
don't know. And this is just I don't know, but could it be that Antarctica is actually the North Pole,
Oh
and that
wow.
this, yeah, could that be it? I don't know, but there's something there. I mean, they've been scanning, haven't they? And they know that there
Yeah.
are,
They have.
that there's something going on underneath there. And why the sudden interest in Antarctica? We know something's happening there, but what could it be? Some people say it's where the Nephilim were, but some people connect the Nephilim to Tartaria. So could it be that the stories we hear of the North, Hyperborea, could it possibly be that there was a pole shift, and that is what's under the ice? Because if there was a pole shift and there was some kind of nuclear event, a cataclysmic event, then that could explain, for the Piri Reis map, the Antarctic Treaty, the fact that we can't go there. We know it's got nothing to do with conservation.
Yeah.
There's something else to it, but what is it? And Admiral Byrd and the Germans during the Second World War, there was this fascination with what was going on there. So I just wonder, and like I said, I've got nothing to prove this other than a suspicion
Yeah.
that could Antarctica be the North Pole, and this is the stories that we hear about the kings of the north. Could that actually be Hyperborea? Could it be Hyperborea?
So do you think that Antarctica? I know there's that big hole. It's smack in the middle of it that everybody keeps talking about, the no-fly zone. You think in any way it's kind of related to Agartha? Maybe like an entrance or something?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Now the Tartarians seem to have known about Agartha. And there are accounts that unfortunately that there's a book about this, but unfortunately it's in German. There is no English translation of it. You can't even get an audio book or a Kindle for it. There's an old German book. It's on Amazon actually, and in that it talks about people coming up from Agartha or from the inner earth and actually trading, doing business with people on the surface, and that eventually these were all blocked off, and it became illegal, forbidden to actually deal with these or even communicate with these people. So yeah, I do think there's something going on. In fact, I think that the Earth is like, I don't know if we're on a spinning ball or it's flat. I don't know. I haven't been into space to check it for myself. So, and I haven't flown or sailed to the ice wall. So I'm kind of on the fence. I don't think we're spinning, and I don't believe anything NASA puts out. And I kind
Yeah,
of normally think whatever we're told is the opposite of what's going on. Really, I think a lot of things are inverted. But I think that whatever we're stood on, it's more like a lump of Swiss cheese, and that there are tunnels everywhere.
that makes
Tunnels
sense.
that
Yeah.
lead to other places. Yeah, I mean, there's tunnels under cities. Almost every single city and town in the world has tunnels under it. And I often wonder if those tunnels weren't originally tunnels, but
Right.
passageways.
Oh yeah, I could see
Have you
that.
been?
Yeah,
Hello,
because you
David.
think how hard is it to build underground? And with the buildings, why would you build a basement where it's harder to actually construct a basement than it is another floor going up? It's a lot harder to do that. And then we have problems with damp. There's no
Yeah.
light in them.
Right.
What really is the purpose of a basement? So, we've got this story that the reason for these mud flood windows and the reason for building up road levels is because of years and years of litter and rubbish and the accumulation of detritus and all sorts of things. And then we just covered it over. So what you're telling me is people were living in palaces, and you had powerful and wealthy people walking through streets full of crap, wading through it to get to their front door. I don't believe that for one moment.
Yeah.
Draped in silk and finery, and yet they had to walk through several feet of junk to get to be able to get into their house or another building or something. I don't buy that for one moment. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. I know whenever you're going back to the buildings and stuff, that I guess,
The architect.
yeah, like the architecture of like Tartaria, what's the significance of them? Like as far as like how are people able to go in there and heal and do all these
Right.
meditations, and how is it connected to like the energy grid? How does that all that work, and how is it all tied in?
Okay, so if people are interested in the healing with frequency, then there are two people. You've got Rife and you've got Tesla, and you can buy a Rife machine or a Tesla machine now, and a lot of people are now actually doing this, and they're having incredible results. So we know that ultimately everything's frequency, and with the right frequency, you can destroy a cell or you can repair a cell. So imagine if you could go into a building, and it didn't cost you anything to do this, but you could walk into a building and that building was full of that energy. It was using cymatics. So you've got music, bells, and the frequency within the building itself that resonating in such a way that it actually heals you. So what you would do is introduce music specifically designed to heal and an instrument to do it, because ultimately we want our organs to function. properly.
Yeah.
And if they're all operating correctly, we're going to obviously, be a lot more healthy. And of course, the healthier we are, the better we feel, the more productive we are. So why not invent something called an organ and put it inside these
Oh,
buildings?
wow.
So yeah, we're talking
Interesting, right?
about
That is interesting.
frequency and cymatics. Yeah. So even now, people can if they've got a problem, a Tesla machine or a Rife machine is proving to be very effective now, and there's been sort of a sudden push on these again. They're almost back up and running. So yes, so you would go inside one of these buildings, and the biggest example would be a cathode row, which is basically an energy, a building of energy, a power station, if you like, a significant power station, and the cathode row becomes the cathedral. You've also got the bells, and the bells did lots of different things, but ultimately
Yeah.
the bells could actually control the environment in a localized area. And you would have several church bells in one area ringing at the same time. And people said in Russia, people used to say that when the bells were operating on the correct frequency before they were all replaced or damaged, that people weren't ill, that they weren't seeing crime, they weren't seeing anxiety or depression or fear. Fertility rates were higher. The weather wasn't so severe. You didn't have dramatic shifts in climate. And then, of course, they came along and changed all of that, because a society of people that are sick are very profitable and also
Yeah.
a lot easier to control. So, that's all part and parcel of removing Tartaria, changing the bells, and turning these buildings into places of worship. But anybody that's read the Bible will know that, we were told not to go into a building to pray, not to
Yeah.
listen to someone telling us how to. It's something you did in solitude. You certainly didn't go somewhere, listen to someone reading a book that you've never properly read yourself.
Yeah.
We were told to do the opposite. So I think the Jesuits hijacked these buildings, hijacked religion, hijacked the secret societies all around between the late 1700s, 1776 into the 1800s. And the destruction of the architecture and the repurposing of buildings is still going on today. They got the bulk of it done, but even today, look at Iran. I mean, it's we've got the largest pyramid in the world there. We've got evidence of civilizations that predate history. So constantly trying to batter the Middle East and flatten the place. It's been going on for a long time. And I don't think it's a coincidence that there's a lot of evidence from previous civilizations there. I think that they are still actively today trying to get rid of whatever's left.
Yeah. I know whenever you're talking about purposely trying to get rid of civilizations like that, and purposely doing these horrible things to go in there, it takes me to 9/11 and the theory with trying to retrieve whether it was DNA or the body of Gilgamesh. And I know you've looked deeply into that. If you could tell us your findings.
Yeah, sure.
Share your
Yeah,
findings.
so he put a memo out about this that got leaked.
Yeah.
I'm sure people will be able to find that online, but circulating still. Yeah, I do believe that the reason for the invasion was actually to recover Gilgamesh's tomb. An archaeologist called Fassbender, a German archaeologist, and the actual story about what he did is still on the BBC's website. He'd found what he believed to be the tomb of Gilgamesh, and then we see 9/11 take place. People immediately, tinfoil hat wearers like myself, immediately think it's an insurance job. I'm thinking this is an insurance job. You could see that it's controlled demolition. It wasn't obviously the planes hitting. That even if those planes existed and it's not CGI, it's clearly that is not how a building collapses. And then you've got other buildings that were damaged and the third building that fell as well. So initially we're all thinking this is a conspiracy. This is an insurance job. He'd taken out an insurance policy just before for terrorism.
Yeah,
So we
that's
smell a
wild.
rat, but I think that that's diversion, sort of misdirection, because we operate with fiat currency. It's not real money. It's not backed by anything. They can sit there and put as many zeros on a bank balance as they want, and we wouldn't know, let alone be able to do anything about it. I think the whole thing was orchestrated to introduce a new threat. We've seen this play out so many times. I mean, look, with Iran, weapons of mass destruction. But now we don't say that. We're calling them a nuclear threat. We've had
Yeah,
weapons of mass
that's true.
destruction before. I don't remember before 9/11 hearing anything about ISIS or Al Qaeda, these terrorist cells. I don't remember that being mainstream news or headline news at all. And in fact, my eldest son worked with a man from Afghanistan a few years ago. He worked with him for a bank. And he said, what was it like living in Afghanistan with all of with Al Qaeda and all of these terrorist cells operating? What was it like? And he said, Al Qaeda. He said, that's the CIA. He said that it's the CIA dressed up. And look at what they did when they went in. They were looting, removing artifacts, looting essentially artifacts from museums. And so I think that this tomb being found, they needed a backstory. They couldn't just go in. So all of a sudden, we're going to have a war on terror. We found out the person responsible, who's living in a cave. He's hiding in a cave. And who finds him? A journalist. The biggest government, the biggest governments in the world, they're deep state operatives. They can't find him. But all of a sudden, a journalist does, and he's interviewing, Osama bin Laden is being interviewed in a cave. How does a journalist find someone that the deep state can't? It's just
Yeah,
nonsense. So, and obviously there's connections with his family, and obviously, lots of business connections. They flew the brothers straight out of America, didn't they, after 9/11 happened? And then we got the Pentagon,
yeah,
no plane. We can find passports, but everything else
yeah,
disintegrated.
yeah.
You know,
That's one thing that always like blew my mind. You have these two buildings that are completely destroyed, beams bent, melted, but somehow, and I remember watching this as a kid. I still remember that day I had skipped school and I was at home. And I remember my mom called. She's like, turn on the TV. She knew I lied, told her I missed the bus. And she called and she was like, turn on the TV. We're being bombed. And I'm like, what? And I remember watching the news and them telling everybody, we found their passports. And it was, the passports were like Harley Burns. And it's like, how out of all that chaos and carnage did they find these two passports? And how would they that quick link these two random photos to Al Qaeda like that quick? Like they just stumble across it and we got them, Al
So,
Qaeda.
so it's a narrative. I feel like it's a narrative they put out there to distract us from what's really going on. Do you think that that people are becoming more aware of these things, or they're more distracted and they blindsided or just blind to what really is going on?
I think that they are overloading people now. Trump seems hell bent on convincing people that there are aliens here. I think that's leading up to Project Bluebeam. After
Yeah.
the pandemic, scamdemic, convid, whatever you want to call it. After that, I think people have become a little bit more suspicious. Those that I would consider to be awake, and I hate doing that, but I
Yeah,
don't
I know.
particularly like the term awake. But the people that I would describe as being awake obviously knew there was something not quite right about the pandemic anyway, and most of the people I know that are down the rabbit hole didn't comply. Didn't take the medical intervention. But, some people did because they were forced into it, backed into a corner. And since then, we've had other sort of outbreaks, monkeypox, Ebola, hantavirus. We've had meningitis here. We've now got Lyme's disease,
Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks to
something
these
else.
ticks.
Yeah.
I think that people are starting to see that you know or think, sorry, what's it going to be next week? What
Yeah,
virus are they going to pluck out of the air next week with, oh, wait for it, we've got a medical intervention for that, we've got a vaccine. So I think that, and when you look at all of these, like meningitis, for example, the outbreak we had here in the southeast of England, if you look at the symptoms with meningitis, they do mirror radiation, again, radiation poisoning from the 5G masts. So I think that all of these, with the exception of the ticks, all of these things are connected to 5G and what will be 6G, and that people are starting to realize that. So I imagine now, if they introduced another COVID type pandemic on that scale, I don't think as many people would take the vaccination as they did last time.
yeah, for
I
sure.
think, and we're being overloaded, aren't we? And we're getting mixed messages because, you know, Trump's now to be almost hell bent on taking over the world. And you've got people that think he's a good guy and people who think he's a bad guy. And he's suddenly sort of depicting himself as being the new messiah or a savior. He's done it in his own
Yeah,
means. So he's picking up the, you know, the Christian community. He's picking those up perhaps to replace the people that aren't that religious, that have lost interest in him or no longer believe him to be the good guy that they thought he was. So I think that they're pulling every trick out of the book that they can to try and kind of confuse us, misdirect us, certainly distract us, but they are bombarding people. And I think that the way they're doing it is too much. It's overwhelming. So a lot of people are either disengaging from it and it's not having the impact that it would have
yeah,
done because it's too much too often,
Mhm.
or people are actually seeing what's truly going on now. But whether or not we'll all wake up, you know, we'll just have to wait and see. I think we still have people that read newspapers, that watch the news and believe it, that will go and have a booster, that vote thinking that their vote makes a difference. You know,
yeah,
they've never counted our votes once. You know, they're not going to start now, are they? So, but I think we're always going to have those people, and we often refer to them as NPCs. But you know, I do think more people are waking up all the time now, and I think we're going to reach a pivotal moment very soon where it all breaks down.
that's awesome. So I wanted to jump back to the vaccines. What do you think the vaccines were really meant for? Do you think it was like to depopulate the world again to try to get rid of some of these people, or do you think they were injecting somebody with like a certain chemical? I mean, because I mean, like 5, 6 years or whatever later, I mean, people are like dropping left and right. People who have taken the jab,
Yeah.
like immediately dropping.
Yeah. From my understanding, about a third of the vaccines were harmful, and they had all sorts of nasties in. We're talking metals, you know, that we know they had metals in them, but also some people, you know, spike protein, and two different venoms, two different snake venoms were found in them. Some people have also suggested that the HIV virus was also in that vaccine, but only a
No
third of them
way.
were actually loaded. Two-thirds of these vaccines allegedly was saline solution. So it was kind of, I suppose, a two-pronged attack. One is, let's see how many people will do what they're told and take this vaccine without questioning it, and then come back and take another and another and another and just let us jab them. How many people are prepared to do that? So I think that served a purpose. That gave them a lot of information, because obviously they know the people. You know, they've got the records of everybody that had them, and records of people that my wife works with, someone whose wife has had 11 of them.
What?
Yeah, and she's not, and that is not unusual. And the clue is really in the word booster. If something works effectively, you don't need a booster for it. So your body, you know, works with it, and you don't require a booster. So, you know, that tells us enough. But I do think that the actual vaccines that were harmful were designed to react with 5G, And that's what we saw, I believe, in China, because they turned 100 5G masts on, up, ramped them up high. They turned them all on at the same time, and that's why we saw pictures or video footage of people dropping down on the streets in China. I think that they had
Oh
had the
yeah.
winter flu jab. I think these people had had the winter flu vaccine, and 100 masts are activated at the same time. Bang! That's what caused the problem. I think that the vaccine is designed to weaken our immune system and trigger illnesses that we might have been able to defend using our own immune system. I think they were also designed to act as a fertility. Um, what would you call it? To reduce our fertility, almost a sterilization, because a lot of people are now having to take IVF treatment to
Yeah.
get pregnant. A lot of miscarriages. So yeah, I think if you look at the Georgia Guidestones, well, you can't look at them now, obviously, but if you look at
Nope.
what they said, they want to reduce the world population to 500 million. We're seeing cancer go through the roof.
Yeah.
We're seeing, MS. People are really suffering. People with respiratory problems, heart problems, palsy, where we're seeing people's faces, paralyzed. This is all connected to it. I think that was a very long answer to a simple question. I think that
I love the
it
long
did
answer.
two things. What sort of level of control have we got over these people? And let's reduce the population by a third.
So I wanted to touch back when you mentioned something about I'm assuming you were talking about government, because first thing I think of is government having all our information. So ancestry, you mentioned that. Do you think they have? Oh, I saw the face. What does that mean?
Yeah.
You know where I'm going with this, right? The DNA coding. Okay. Do you have any insight on
Yeah.
that? You said yeah.
Yeah, I have. And the second book I wrote is called Rise of the Clones, and that's actually explores this. 23andMe and Ancestry.com, I believe, are actually connected to the CIA. If you look at who owns, let's take Ancestry.com for just an example. They're owned by BlackRock. Now, BlackRock, most of their investment goes into bioweaponry. That is where a lot of their investment is. So why would you invest money in bioweaponry and then buy a genealogy database that contains lots of people's DNA? Why would you do that? You're targeting people. You
Yeah.
are looking at people's DNA so you can target them with specific weapons. Chemical weapons, weaponized vaccines, whatever it is, put it in our food, water supply. But also, I think they're looking for people too. Some say that it's the bloodline of Jesus. I don't necessarily agree or disagree with that, because, I did he exist? Didn't he exist? I don't know. There are lots of people throughout history, yeah, and in different cultures and civilizations that tell the story of someone very similar, virgin birth,
Yeah.
and so on. We performing miracles. We've seen that throughout different cultures. So
Yeah.
I don't know if he was if they were reigniting or reintroducing an older story, or it was someone that returned again, that has been here several times throughout different civilizations to try and help. I don't know. I wasn't there. I've got
I
no
wish I
idea.
was.
Yeah, be nice to go back. We need the chronovisor to do that, don't we? But if that's what they are looking for, it makes sense. So I think they're looking for blood groups. The blood group, there is an unknown blood group, and I can't find it out anywhere what it is. I can't find any information on it, but there is an unknown blood group that is connected to the Rothschilds and their offshoots, like the Rockefellers and these other families, DuPont and so on, or senior. They're all basically ultimately connected through blood. So are they looking for other people that are actually their blood group? That would serve two purposes. One, you can bring them on side and say, well, you're one of us. Welcome to the family. or they could use them because they could use their blood, they could use their
Yeah.
organs, you know. So maybe they're looking for that, or maybe they're looking for more people that have Rh null, which is golden blood. And there are allegedly only 43 people in the world that have Rh null blood. Both your parents have to have Rh null. I know one person that's got it. One person I've spoken to has Rh null, and he
No
worked for the
way.
yeah, he worked for the NSA. And as soon as he had his medical, they found out what blood group he was. They immediately redeployed him to become a remote viewer.
No way.
Mm.
That's awesome. That's man, that's wild. So with this DNA, whenever say they do have like this special DNA, I had kind of heard some theories about that they're also trying to track down and get rid of people who they think have like hybrid blood. I guess from like a different kind of advanced beings or alien beings or something like that.
Dimensional beings or something.
But what do you think they would do if they actually track them down?
I think you probably get a visit. I think I think if they found you, then they're going to take you one way or another, and it might appear the offer of a lifetime. You know, you might be approached, formally approached, um, you know, being offered a job. So you know, you might be unfortunate enough to be in an accident that wasn't an accident. I don't
Yeah,
know, but they are looking for people. I believe they're looking for people, but as I said earlier on, I also think that they're using it to because you know I'm connecting the fact that you know Blackstone and BlackRock invest billions of dollars in bioweaponry, and out of nowhere buy Ancestry.com. Now that in
And
itself is
anybody who
unusual.
it is, and anybody who submits their DNA there, their DNA code is now there, so they have
Yeah,
access to that. That is
yeah,
interesting. What do they want with our DNA code?
yeah.
I know. It makes me think back to I had listened to a podcast that you were on, and you were talking about that one of the reasons it was believed that they had went, back into Iraq or wherever it was that where they had Gilgamesh's grave or whatever was maybe to extract his DNA, but for what purpose would that be? Maybe like to clone him.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because if you wanted to build a real super army, then why not take the if you like the sort of offspring. I suppose he was a hybrid. He was the the son of Enki, and his mother was a
Yeah.
human like us, a Homo sapien. Apparently, you have got a hybrid demigod there. That his height varies from 12 feet to 18 feet, depending on who you're talking to. We've
Yeah.
seen we've seen him carrying a lion under his arm. He had a quest for immortality. So I think if you wanted to make a super army, a super soldier, then he would be a bloody good place to start. So yes,
Yeah.
I think that that's what they were doing. And incidentally, I spoke to someone who he's got a podcast channel, but he spoke to me after we were recording, and his name's Jay. Um, and he was actually security at the site and saw them
No
airlift the tomb.
way.
He was there when they airlifted it. Yeah.
Did he
Um,
see the actual body?
no, just the tomb being airlifted. Yeah.
How big did he say
He
it
ne-
was?
do you know what? I never even asked him that. He said
Oh man.
that he was there, that he watched it. He watched it actually happening, but he wasn't. He never actually saw inside it or anything like that. But he was actually there. He was on the perimeter. They were patrolling the perimeter, stopping anybody from watching what was going on or getting in. And that was his task. But he wasn't high up enough or in the right department to be actually looking
Yeah.
inside it and seeing it. He was just military security. Um, so yeah, he watched the whole thing play out. But he had some quite a bit of information, but he had to. I think he kept it somewhere else, not in his home, but somewhere else, because he had been threatened before about talking about it. So yeah, I think that you've got there the really the DNA of a super soldier.
Mhm.
Yeah, I can just imagine a whole bunch of, like Gilgamesh is running around, and they have that Anunnaki blood, pretty much an army of demigods, damn near. Just and the kind of strength that this dude had, like you said, he was over there carrying a freaking tiger, and it looked like a little cat to him.
Yeah,
These guys were massive.
and the thing is as well, I mean, if we're looking at from sort of Abrahamic religions, if we're looking at end of time, end of days, sorry, that we are coming to a pivotal moment where we are going to see, I suppose, the whole thing play out, and the end of civilization as we know it, and this reset. Then, if all of a sudden these giants appear, if they could clone using the DNA of Gilgamesh, if they could reproduce, a couple of hundred of those, then, in biblical terms, we're talking about seeing what we would imagine would be the Watchers or Nephilim
The
returning.
Nephilim, yeah.
It actually fits the story. And the people that aren't religious will suddenly become religious. The people that are religious will have all of their suspicions reinforced. They're now going to believe
Yeah.
everything that was in that book. We'll have non-believers and believers actually thinking, wow, I was wrong or I was right. This is happening. The Nephilim are here, or the Watchers, or whatever you want to wherever you're coming from. You imagine that 200 of those suddenly appearing in the Middle East.
What's going on, everyone? It's Tony Mars with the Melted Broadcast. If you or anyone you know would like to come on the show and talk about your experience, maybe you've experienced paranormal, maybe you've been studying ancient history or the forbidden knowledge all your life, maybe you're a spiritual teacher. If you would like to come on the show, you can reach me at themeltedbroadcast@gmail.com or hit us up on the website at www.themeltedbroadcast.com. Peace. That's man, that's wild. And what's crazy with when it comes to giants, so with the UFO topic and aliens, now being publicly talked about, it used to be this super taboo topic that nobody could touch, and now people are talking about it. But when it comes to giants, why is it that that's like a no go area? Like I know there's somebody who was on one of the Marine squads that in Afghanistan they had got attacked by that big redhead headed giant, and he was a part of the task force that had killed it and flew it out, and he was trying to come out and talk about it, and he started getting threatened death threats, and pretty much you could talk about UFOs and all that stuff, but when it comes to this, like, don't even talk about it, don't even think it. But why do you think it's such a more dangerous topic than say UFOs?
With UFOs, I think that that pushes more people to believe that there is something going on out in space, and that justifies NASA. And also, it's a massive distraction. So I think that the UFO industry, for want of a better expression, is worth an incredible amount of money, and it takes people's imagination and sends it off into the stratosphere. So I think that that's a brilliant distraction. I think it allows them to work with craft and reverse engineer things that maybe is being shared by other civilizations. And when they fly them around to test them out, that people are just going to see, wow, another UFO. This is fascinating. But I think there's a build up to Project Bluebeam. I think we are going to see a staged alien event. Personally, I believe that aliens, if there are aliens here, I believe they're underground, underwater. I don't think they're up in the sky at all. Because I do find it funny that they can travel, millions of light years through space, only to get here and crash. That doesn't make much sense, does it? They can master that, but they can't land. You know, it's a little bit like, in my opinion, and I don't want to be flippant, but, and this is a George Carling kind of line, it's a little bit like religion.
I like
You've got this all-powerful God, almighty God that can do everything, everything, knows what you're thinking, can manifest anything at all. The only thing he's no good with is money. Whenever you walk into one of his buildings, they always want you to hand over cash. Why is he no good with money, but he can do everything else? And it's like the UFOs. They can master being able to travel millions of light years through lots of different galaxies to get here and then crash. That doesn't really make much sense, does it? Maybe they're going to need to get better pilots or something. I don't know. But see, the UFO thing is kind of fascinating, and it's a distraction. It's a brilliant distraction. The giants, I think, is different because that then questions our the story of evolution. Then is gone. It questions everything we know about us being here, because if we have been involved, if we have been created in the image of gods, then where do these giants come from? These big red-headed giants? That you know, are they the image as well? Like, how does this work? If we look at Darwin's theory of evolution, the origin of species, then how do you account for a 12-foot red-headed giant with 2 rows of teeth? You know,
Yeah.
where does that come into it? So I think the moment the world know that there were giants, and still are, because the Solomon Islands, apparently they're still in the caves in the Solomon Islands, people still see them. And as you said, we saw them in the Middle East. They were tossing soldiers around like they were rag
Yeah.
dolls. And I think if you've got to, like they did with Gilgamesh's tomb, if you've got to airlift one of these beings, then that's giving you an idea of how big it really is. So I think that if people were to realize that giants are here, have existed, then that's a problem. And I've read in several accounts that that they actually worked with us. We weren't enemies with the giants. They walked among us. There are lots of giants in Tartaria, and I'm not talking about red-headed, sort of Gilgamesh-esque beings. I'm talking about people like us. Now, they would say it's the pituitary gland, that it's a genetic mutation. But no, these are people that served in the army. They first and Second World War. They're photographs of giants, and I mean I'm talking people at least 7 feet tall. When we look at Robert Percy Wadlow, we can see someone who has giantism. You can see he didn't live that long. He had disabilities, but look at the Harlem Globetrotters. Look at the Harlem Globetrotters. They are not suffering from any form of disability. In fact, they're quite the opposite. So I think that if people were to realize that we had giants until relatively recently, giant people, then that does throw out our story of evolution, and we're going to question where they came from, because we've got different types of beings living with us, yet we all came from the same place. How does that work? So I think that when the time is right, they will unveil the truth. They'll do it in a very scary and dramatic way, because I think at that moment it will probably end religion as we know it. I think it will be timed with a fake alien invasion like Project Bluebeam, and then someone will appear as our savior, and that will be what we would refer to as the Antichrist.
So I was actually talking about this the other day on the show, and I know JD Vance has started talking about their demons. Do you think, like, since everybody's been knowing about them trying to play the blue beam card for the longest, that they're going to try to flip it now to the religious aspect of it, and make it like one of those apocalyptic, the demons are coming, the devil's going to come up, and then the savior's going to come and save us, rather than the original plan where they're going to do the original blue beam where the aliens are coming to invade and all that, to form this one world order?
Yeah, I personally think that we will see whatever we want to see. So if you are religious, I think you will see your God appear. And I think if you're not religious, you will see an alien invasion. I think that we're going to see different things depending on our belief system. Um, in the same way that shapeshifting works, where people think that shapeshifting is basically a reptilian that actually changes its appearance, but it isn't. That isn't how shapeshifting works. Shapeshifting works by that being actually changing your perception of what you're seeing, and that's why we have glitches. So we'll often see glitches
Yeah.
on TV streams of footage. So I think it will actually, and I think that this is to do with the chemtrailing, the 5G and 6G. I think that they're going to manipulate us. This is going to be one massive MK Ultra, and they're going to manipulate us so we see either our biggest fear or the thing that we want to see more than anything else. Because for me, it would be a toss up, because I sit between UFOs and religion, and I don't know which one I would rather see. Would I want to see, Jesus appear or a god appear? Would I want to see the Anunnaki return? I don't know. I could never pick that one. That's a real tough one.
I think I would want to see the Anunnaki appear.
I certainly lean more towards that, but I think that it's going to be interesting, because typically people, we've been told to fear aliens, that they're going to, and they always pick this one, they're going to anally probe us. Why that? Why does it always stick something up our asses? Where does that come from?
They do
I, I,
say
al-
that
I always
shit.
get so much shit from people because they know I'm into all these topics, and I always get the same freaking thing. Have you gotten probed yet?
Yeah.
It's like
I think that
one of those things, man.
I think people that have actually had, people that have experienced abductions, I think that is deep state. I think that's a psyop. I think that because it keeps it going, doesn't it? Within the communities, it's a brilliant distraction. And then people who aren't even into conspiracy theories know about these things, talk about it. They've watched the X-Files. They've watched, I don't know, Independence Day. We're all watching the same stuff, even if it's just
Yeah.
Star Wars. So I think that what we might find is a staged alien invasion could result in a lot of people reaching for their firearms and weapons and actually going out there and trying to fight. That could cause incredible civil unrest. That could lead to a civil war.
Yeah.
So I think that it's going to serve several purposes. I don't think whatever happens, it will be real. I think it will be CGI or MK Ultra, but certainly I think they're ramping this up, and Trump seems really keen on the aliens at the moment, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does.
But then I saw a meme of him recently where he's the Messiah, leaning over someone who looked a little bit like Epstein, with soldiers that were angels behind him. And he's appealing to both audiences, isn't he?
Yeah. And what's crazy, so I had went on to the alien.gov or whichever website it was, and it kind of made me mad because it came up on the screen, it says loading, and then you start scrolling down and it's like, and he was just messing with everybody, but I don't really like the way he did it. And it says they are here, they walk amongst us, and you start reading it, you're like, holy shit, it's really happening. He's telling everybody. And then you start getting to the bottom. He's like, if you've seen any of these alien abductions, don't worry about it. And if you see one and you want it to get taken care of, you can call the ICE department. And he starts turning it into that. I'm like, come on, bro.
To be honest with you, I haven't gone in to look at any of that, because I'm not against the government, but I also am not naive to think that we don't get lied to. So it's kind of like we're damned if we do, we damned if we don't. We ask for the information, they put it out there, but then we don't believe it, because for me personally, I feel like they put out there what they want you to know. They want to control the narrative. So when we talk about disclosure really is going to come from the experiencers, the people who are experiencing what, and going through what they're going through. I don't go into there and pull those reports and look at it.
There is something that these politicians, and it doesn't matter whether we're talking about any world leader, there is something that they always do. If you want to spot them when they're lying, they have a telltale sign. and it's really easy to pick up, and you'll spot it now. The moment I've said this, you'll spot it every single time. Whenever they lie, they always do the same thing. They talk. Do not believe anything any of them tell you. Whether you know, if you're looking at, look at who bankrolled him. Each time he's gone bankrupt, look into where the money came from. Look at who he used to hang around with when he was younger. You know, these people are not who you think they are. Most are put in by the Bilderberg Group. They're backed by always backed ultimately by the Rothschilds financially. They are puppets. They don't have the authority to do anything. They find people that are prepared to stand up there and regurgitate and push their narratives of think tanks like Trilateral Commission, World Economic Forum, you know, obviously Bilderberg Group, Council on Foreign International Affairs, all of these things, Council of Foreign Relations, all of these groups are ultimately controlling all the world leaders. It's arguable that maybe not Putin and probably not Kim Jong-un, but the majority of world leaders are puppets, absolute puppets. And when you get someone who's a narcissistic, to be fair, you know, a very narcissistic, very brash, egotistical person, and you tell them you're going to do this, you're going to do that, you're going to tell them this, that, and the other, they're going to be more than happy to do that because the credit's on them, or all of a sudden the attention's on them. They love it. They absolutely, they love it. But they don't run anything. You know, your president, our prime minister, they don't have the authority to change the toilet paper in the bathroom. You know, that they're pulled, their strings are pulled from way higher than that. They're just either unlucky enough or dumb enough or egotistical enough to want the job.
So I do want to touch on, you know, we're talking about these puppet masters, and a lot of people start going to tie in them being, I guess, affiliated or actually are these reptilian beings that are kind of controlling, you know, the world or whatever. But before we get into that, I do want to say, when you were growing up, you know, your dad was reading all these books, like with David Icke, and you know, so many years later, you know, kind of coming full circle, how does it feel to be doing interviews with him and actually, you know, working with the legend himself? I mean, I saw an interview that you had earlier today of you interviewing him, and I was like, man, that's got to be like a dream come true.
It was really strange. Yeah. I never saw that happening. And when he said that he'd read my first two books, I was gobsmacked. I mean, I knew that his sons had read them, and the producer, Richard Willett, Iconic, which is the company, that he'd read them, but I didn't think David had. And I was blown away because he was very complimentary as well. He said he'd read a lot of books on Tartaria, but mine was the one that seemed to connect more dots for him, and he liked the way it was written. And I thought, wow. And yeah, it was odd. And also at the same time, I was nervous. I was very, very nervous. But I'm going to be speaking at a big event in the south of England in September with David Icke. So I'll be on stage with David and Billy Carson. Yeah. And so for me, that's you know, that's really weird, but I am looking forward to meeting Billy because he never replies to my WhatsApp. Well, I can't say that. He doesn't reply to most of my WhatsApp messages. So I am looking forward to meeting him so I can show him our WhatsApp conversation and say, what is, my little dog's barking now, sorry. What, you know, what do I need to do to get you to actually acknowledge my messages? Arse, you know. So yeah, it's surreal because I've followed them both, David obviously for a lot longer, and to be actually now working with them and talking with them and sharing ideas together. I didn't see that happening. As I said before, you know, I was a tattoo artist that lived down the rabbit hole. I didn't expect any of this to happen.
And now you're in the big leagues.
I don't know about that, but yeah, I mean, you know, I'm certainly in a different place to where I thought I was, and I just didn't think the book would sell that much. I didn't think when I started talking about Tartaria, most people didn't know what I was on about. And I didn't think that it would end up being translated into different languages, and lots of people would be buying it and then messaging me saying thank you, that's confirmed what I thought, or that's filled in a few blanks, or my God, you've changed my thoughts on history altogether. I wasn't expecting any of that. I was writing because I've struggled with my memory. My memory's deteriorating quite rapidly,
Okay.
and has been for about the last 10 years. So I had all of these notes and I wanted to put them into some kind of order that made sense so I could refer to it when I'm older. I could leave them to my children, their children, and so on. And I started a Facebook group and I started talking about my research and that I was writing a book, and people started saying, can I pre-order a copy? I was thinking, what? I haven't even written it yet. What's going on? And before I knew it, I was on YouTube, and yeah. So this is all kind of this. I didn't plan any of this. It's an accident, or it's actually what I was always supposed to do.
Yeah, and I believe I had heard that your first copy you had sold like over, what was it, like 15,000 copies or something?
It's difficult to know. I mean, this sounds really bad because I don't know the exact figures on the books individually, because I don't keep brilliant records of the ones that have been purchased from myself. Because sometimes someone just sends me money by PayPal, sometimes they buy one through the website, and that's been going on for sort of 18 months now. But it is about 21,500 books combined.
Damn.
Yeah. And then
That's
about
awesome, man.
how many? 6,400 audiobooks.
He's like, I don't really keep
don't keep the
keep up
numbers.
with the
But I
numbers,
don't know
but a little over 20,000.
But I don't know. I can't tell you exactly how many of each book I've sold. Amazon provide me with those details, but I haven't kept those details myself of
Yeah.
the sold copies that I've sold directly. I've just got
Yeah.
a number. I can't break it down into individual books. So yeah, I know the total score, but I don't have brilliant information because through my own fault of what books sold, what. But Tesla and the Cabbage Patch Kids obviously was the first book I wrote. That was the one that people seemed more interested in because of Tartaria really now gaining a lot of traction and attention. So that one has naturally sold more than the others. My latest book only came out in December, so that's that's going to take a long time to catch up with Tesla and the Cabbage Patch Kids.
Yeah, and I know with this book again, I'll show it conspiracy theories. It's crazy, the 87 rabbit holes that you have. And I was, going through the different sections that you have, where it has all 87 subjects of it. And almost everyone, I'm like, oh shit, Aleister Crowley, Baphomet, Bill Gates. Like I'm just like tripping on all the subjects. I'm like, man, this is gonna be great.
Well, it's the reason for the name is the Agatha to Zombies is it's an A to Z.
Yeah.
So as you can see through the index, it literally goes through the entire alphabet.
All right, Guy, I have a question for you. All right. If you had 2 hours with a room full of professional historians, archaeologists, and scientists who completely disagree with everything you've said, what evidence would you present first, and what would you ask them to explain to you?
Oh, that's a really good question. Well, first of all, I would want to know why they are dismissing the information. Why? Because my assumption with these things is that they are not prepared to put their neck on the line because they're scared of not just the repercussions and ridicule, but having their backing. A lot, the finance removed. So, a lot of them are getting money to conduct research into things that follow the mainstream narrative. So I would want to know who funds them. And then I would want to put them on a lie detector. So I want one of those in the room.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
because
interesting.
I want the truth. Then I would present to them the work of Anatoly Fomenko, As I said earlier on, Sebastian Munster, Mercator. I would present all of that work. I would then bring out the Piri Reis map, get them to explain that. I would then get them to explain to me a mud flood window. Why do we have buildings where this window is just appearing, half buried in the ground? Then we'd move on to star forts. They can tell me why they align to constellations and resonate at 432 hertz if they're just a fortress.
Yeah.
What is the military advantage of having a fortress that aligns with a constellation and vibrates at 432 hertz? Because the Smithsonian's institution can't explain that one, so those bastards can explain it. And that would just be my starter for 10. But I would want them strapped to a lie detector.
Oh, I would want to be a fly on that wall.
Not this fly, but another fly. Yeah, we're actually talking about. She had brought up that question to me. She's like, "I think this would be a good question to ask," and I'm like, "Man, that's gonna be very interesting to hear his answer." I was like, "I know he's got a good answer." I was like, "I've been watching this dude's interviews. Like, this dude's freaking solid. He's on it."
Thanks.
All right, and then this is the part of the show that I like to do called rapid fire questions. So no explanation needed. They're rapid fire questions. These are
Okay.
for funsies. All right. So Atlantis, real or myth?
Real.
Extraterrestrials, yes or no?
Yes, but not where we think they're from. I don't think there's anything up there.
Okay. Nikola Tesla or Albert Einstein?
Oh, I don't. What do you mean by that?
It's just rapid fire questions.
I guess who would you lean into more?
Right. Well, I don't. There is a possibility both of those people are not who we thought they were. So Einstein appears to have,
Man.
I think Einstein appears to have got all of the information he was putting out there from his wife, who works at the patent office, and there is evidence to suggest Nikola Tesla didn't exist.
What?
That is for another show.
Yeah, that's for another show because I heard you talking about this earlier today.
No problem.
All right. Biggest mystery on Earth.
Us.
One book everyone should read.
Right. Well, I won't say my own. Oh,
I mean, you could.
I would say the Book of Enoch.
Yes, I have it right here in the corner.
Yes. He's
Good
got
place
them.
to
Okay.
start, that one. Yeah.
The Book of Enoch, people. Okay. All right. One historical figure you'd love to interview.
So I'm going back in time.
You can.
You can.
Okay, Jesus.
Okay. If you could know the answer to one mystery, what would it be?
Oh, God. There you go. That's a good one. God. Yeah, I'll go with that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
What's God? What is it? Who is it? What is it?
Yeah. A big, probably the biggest question that needs to be answered. I know for me.
Thank you for playing the rapid fire questions too, by the way.
Oh, you're welcome. Here's a question for you too. If you could bring back somebody from the dead for an hour, it's a little bit like your question, but if you could bring someone back from the dead for 1 hour, and you could invite them around for a drink, who would it be?
Well, I don't know if it would be for a drink because I don't drink, but if I could bring somebody back, it would probably be and have an hour with them in conversation. It would be Thoth.
Oh, wow. Crikey. Okay. That's a good one. What about you, Mary?
Well, that's a hard question. And it wouldn't be an answer that you like his, obviously, but honestly, it would be my father. I would like to have a conversation with him.
That.
And the reason for that is because during a traumatic time, he was killed, by the way. So during that time after his passing, I believed that I astral projected and to look for him, and I found him. And I believe that that would have been in the fifth dimension. So I would, if I could bring anybody back, it would be him, because there were questions that I would definitely want to ask about that interaction. So,
I'm guessing, well, first of all, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to hear.
thank you.
But I'm guessing he was a good person,
Hmm. Yeah,
because
he
if he's in
was.
the fifth dimension, that's I don't believe, as from my understanding, you don't access the fifth dimension unless you have to have love in
Yes,
you, real love.
my father was he was poor. My father was poor. We, by all means, didn't have money. He was a very poor man. However, what he was rich in was so much love for humanity and people. And it didn't matter who you were on the street. And he didn't drive a car. He rode a bike, and he would ride hours just to visit, like me and stuff, because we lived like about an hour and a half away. But if he saw somebody on the street that was walking in the rain and didn't have a coat or an umbrella or whatever, obviously he couldn't offer a ride because he didn't have a car, but he would take the shirt off of him or his jacket, and he would give it to that person with nothing. Like, he didn't talk about it. He just did it and moved on, because his thing was, and the people that did this to him, I already know what he would have said is like, you forgive them because I forgive them. So, I struggled with that for the longest time, forgiving the people who did that. And because they're still not being held accountable, even though they're just suspects, even, and this is 12 years, 13 years later, you know, they were just suspected of it. But yeah, he was that kind of person that didn't matter. The funeral, there was people that I didn't know. There was the school he worked at, the kids that send letters, like, that we miss him, we loved him, he was good. Yeah, I would definitely want to have that conversation with him, and what the experience was, what that he and I experienced after his passing. So it would definitely be him.
Yeah.
I think that's lovely. I think if we could go back now and ask, even further than that, if you could go back and ask your grandparents, in my case, I lost my grandparents years ago, I'm clocking on a bit. If I could go back and ask my grandfather all of the questions I have now that he may have some of the answers to, that would be an incredible opportunity. The time I got to spend with him was as a child. He died when I never met my other real grandfather, but I had step because my nan remarried. But my mother's father, if I could go back and have my time again with him, because we lost him I was in my 20s. Knowing what I know now and having all these questions in my mind, I think he might have some answers for me that I was too young to ask when he was around. And imagine if you could bring a great grandparent back and say, "Did you go to a World's Fair?"
Hmm.
Oh yeah.
That would be
Yeah, and then start interrogating them. Yeah,
right. We're gonna do this for a little bit more than an hour, Grandpa and Dad.
yeah. You're not going anywhere. Yeah, but I do believe that that the fifth dimension is reserved for the right people, and you have to be full of love. And I think that when we eventually ascend to that, whether that happens collectively, they're predicting not 2045, 2046. I think for that huge ascension, I think we're going to leave a few people behind that that we don't really want, perhaps reducing our vibration.
Yeah, when I did see him after the passing, and I followed him through there, he did tell me at that time that it was not my time, that I didn't belong there yet, that I had to go back. And so I remember and we didn't speak, it was more telepathically. And then I just shot through a portal and then woke up. So I knew 12 years ago I wasn't in the journey that I am now. So now that I understand that, now I realize he was right. I'm not there yet. So yeah.
Yeah,
That's
you got things to do. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So before you go, where can people reach you and check out all your stuff?
My website is the best place to find me, which is just under my name. So the Tartarian Empire freemasons.co.uk, because there's blogs on there that people might read and find interesting, that can't appear on social media. That I would be banned. I'm restricted as it is. Only 5% of my followers get to see my posts. So there's the information there they might want to read. They can buy my books on there if they want signed copies. Obviously, they can get them online, like Amazon and places, but they can buy those on there. But my links are on there as well. So whether it's YouTube or Facebook or whatever, the links are on there if they want to, have a look at any of my work or videos or whatever. So website's the best place.
Wonderful.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Guy Anderson, for coming on, man. Again,
You're
this
welcome.
Yeah, it
this was
such a
quite
pleasure.
this was quite a journey, and
Yes.
I know I got some good information that I wanted to cover. So again, I really appreciate you coming on, and we'll definitely have you on again, because there's some other topics that I would love to talk about, especially with that Albert Einstein and Nikola Tesla.
Yeah,
that
sure. But
you were
yeah, I'm
talking
more than
about.
happy. More than happy to come back. Yeah, whenever you want, just let me know. But if you want me to, come on again, just shout, and I'm happy to do that as many times as you wish.
Awesome. Thank you so
Wonderful. Thank
much,
you
Guy.
so
Well,
much.
You're
you have a great
welcome.
day, and I'll be reaching
Thank
out soon,
you.
man. And good luck at that conference that speaking with David Icke and Billy Carson.
Yes.
That's freaking awesome. I'm jealous.
Thank you. I'm sure I'll speak to you before then. It's not till September, but thank you. Thank you
yeah,
very
for
much.
sure.
And thanks for having me on.
Thank you.
All right, man. Hey, you have a good one.
And you.
Peace.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye for now. Bye-bye.
People say that I'm one of the greats, I'm the one that you love to hate. Shake 'em up like a quake, pop your feelings and turn and dispose them like haters I throw away. I'm forever blessed, got the spirit that's holy controlling me, I ain't gotta coordinate. I just sit back and buckle my bells and I'm ready to blaze in the stars of my destination. Melted, broadcast, open vision. Melted, broadcast, open vision. Melted, broadcast, open vision. Melted, broadcast, open vision.